Hello! So today we're going to be doing triggers, which are just sensors in this. We're going to be doing contact listening, and we're going to be doing contact filtering. I've already done contact filtering and then sensors. I've already implemented them. They are in Engine. Also, I should mention I just extracted the folder. Make sure you do the same. If you do not, it won't load. I showed this last week. I'm just making sure to show it again every week to make sure that it's remembered every time. And I hope you're ready to learn. Today we're going to be opening up PhysicsBody and PhysicsBody.cpp first. So there are a few things that I've created today. So first I've created enum categories. Hi enum categories. So we've got environment. These are things that the players like. These are typically static and they're just within the world. Objects. These are things that you can move around within the world. Then you got the player. Then you've got other friendlies, like things you don't want the player to get hurt by. Then you've got enemies. These are things you do want the player to get hurt by. Pickups. These are things that you want to attach onto the player, basically. And triggers. These are things that you want to do something. And so I've just added a few, like, so this here, you can set these regularly. Now the biggest thing is that if and when you integrate this with whatever your regular version of the framework is, you will be breaking every single one of your PhysicsBody constructors because I have implemented new parameters. So I've given you control over the friction and density, and this actually gives you like better looking physics bodies, better looking everything. Now, then we've got the so this is the category of the PhysicsBody. So if this body that I create is a player, category will be player. And then collides with is a bunch of ORed together different categories. So if this entity collides with player, friendly, and environment, then it's going to, we're going to write that. And so, I haven't made any other changes, and there won't be any changes in here this week. Probably will be next week. But I figured I would get you guys all of these. This way you can get all of your puzzles set up and like looking nice and working. In addition to that, I have created this basic class called Trigger. And so what this does is on trigger, it just sets the transparency of the connected object that it's triggering on. So this will be attached to your trigger, and it will trigger the moment someone enters that area, the moment someone with a valid collision mask, enters that area. And once that happens, it will basically do whatever this is. And so what you can do is you can actually create new versions of this, the same as you do with the scenes. And I will go over this another time, not today specifically. Today I'm trying to make sure that I can get you as much content in as little time as possible without rushing it, and make it so that you're all ready for getting to at least the halfway point of making your puzzles. So now you can like start to make things like and I may show near the end of the video if we have time. I'm trying to make this one around 40 minutes because I think that would be best. I think that a lot of people lose interest after 40 minutes, like even before that they lose interest, but I can't stuff all this content into like less than that. But I think people lose interest, and I think people stop watching, and I think people start skipping through it when they see that hour-long video mark. And so what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and go through things as quickly and as concisely as possible. I just had to stumble on that word, didn't I? So what we're going to open right now is, as usual, Physics Playground. We're going to be messing around in Physics Playground again. So we're going to go in here. We're going to mess around with things. And so you'll notice I've already gone in here. So this is the player. This is Link. This is the player. It collides with enemy, objects, and pickups. So, makes sense. This one is an environment, and we need to change this. I did not change this. So trigger, it contacts with player, and that's all. It is a static body, so it will stay in place where it is. And what we want to do is make it so, and currently it has a sprite. Typically you wouldn't want them to have a sprite. You can just make them invisible. You can make their, like, you can just do like get sprite and then do dot, like, 0% transparency, dot set transparency 0. But in this case, we're going to be making our trigger have a sprite and actually look like something, and we're going to be putting it at the end of the level. And we're going to set this up now so that we can go look at it. So static wall is back here. So what else do we want it to collide with? Well, we talked about making objects collide with it. So this OR just makes it combines these two into one so that it works together. So these are both the same. I would explain this, but it'd be better off if you Googled it. This is the bitwise OR operator. I would recommend searching up the bitwise operators. They allow you to use small numbers in interesting ways. Okay, so we've got this. We want to put this at the end of the level. So where's the end of our level? So we've got 30, negative 20F. So 30, negative 20F. So 325. So we want to put this at 300, I believe. And so negative 30, so we want to put this at negative 50. So this is actually the floor near this. This is the wall near it. So we want to put this one at negative negative 30. Yeah, that should work. So now if we go through, it's got to build. So what we're doing here is we're basically creating a trigger, and because of the way that this trigger object works, which you haven't attached to it, this is a component. Because of the way this trigger component works. Oh, and when you create a new trigger component, when you create a new version of it, and I'll show you guys later, I'm going to be doing my best to get through all this content. This should be easy, hopefully. I've written it once before, so it should work. Hopefully. I'm pretty confident that it will work, but I never liked saying 100% because if I say 100% and then it doesn't work, well then it doesn't work and I look like a fool. But I will tell you that's the reality of programming. You can be pretty confident in your code that it's going to run and then have it just randomly not run. That is the reality of programming. Bugs get introduced every day. Oh yeah, but I have, because we've changed friction, everything works better. And that's our trigger. That is our trigger right here. So one thing that I want to make sure that we do is I want us to set this trigger to be in front of everything. So 80. Just make sure that it's in front of everything. So that trigger is now going to be in front of all of our objects. And if we set it up right, so here, we can add that right now. ECS, attach component, trigger, entity. You'll notice that we didn't collide with it. We were able to walk over it, even though it has a physics body on it. Weird, right? So now what we do here, get component, trigger, and then we give the entity number. Trigger entity dot set entity. And so if we wanted it to do something else to another entity, so if we wanted this to do it to link, so we can do main. I'll show you that later. I'll show that later when it's actually like implemented fully, because it's cool. It's cool what we can set it up to do. The way that this trigger works is that this should theoretically all fall into place. If it doesn't, just know I had it working, and I will get it working on video. So this is objects. It collides with everything. This collides with players and objects. None of them actually mention trigger. This is so that we don't actually end up with like a certain thing happening. And so now that we have the trigger component, we have the trigger saved. We have no way of triggering this trigger. Crazy, huh? So what we need to create is this thing called a contact listener, and this contact listener will basically allow us to it will allow us to do specific things when specific objects interact with each other. So you can check if contact, like if this object is an enemy and this object's a player, and then you can do damage to the player. Or if this object is a sword and this object is an enemy, and you can do damage to the enemy. And so on and so on. And so what we're going to do here is, I'm going to show you something really cool. We're going to do add. Go to add after right-clicking on SpriteLib up here. Add class. And now we can create our class. So I'm going to call it Physics Playground Listener. Now it's going to create both files for me automatically. As you can see, it's quite cool. So public, private, and I want this to include box 2D, and then box 2D. And we want it to inherit contact listener. And then so now if you hold Control and click on this, it'll take you to the definition, to the place where this thing is created. So what we want to do, these are virtual. So we want to implement begin contact. In this case, we only really care about begin contact, but we're gonna also bring in end contact. So then you just copy. It's just easy. This is just an easy way of dealing with all this stuff. Override. There. We've now got a physics playground. And so what we want to do is, so we really want things to be, and then fixture A, fixture B, over here, sensor. So what we're gonna do is, it doesn't really matter. So because of the way that we've set this up, how trigger will only collide with players or objects, it doesn't matter what enters the trigger in this case. Our trigger is only going to be triggered by the items that it needs to be triggered by. This trigger will only ever be triggered by a player or an object. Now, if we create a new trigger, we can make it so it'll only ever be triggered by an enemy, or only ever triggered by, and as long as we write these triggers right, the trigger will do what it's meant to do regardless of any of that, regardless of who's triggering it. It'll do what it's meant to do. So if an enemy enters a trigger and it's meant to, like, spawn more enemies, then it's going to spawn more enemies if you write your trigger right. So, like, just call it spawn trigger. Or if an enemy leaves an area and you want your character to respawn, just call it respawn trigger, and it'll trigger character respawning. So in begin contact, the first thing that we want to do is B2 fixture pointer, fixture A. So this is just good to make sure to do. These are just good things to have in here. So this is me just getting these so I don't have to keep doing dot get fixture. And then what we're going to do is actually check which one of these is the sensor, or if either of them is the sensor. So fixture A dot get dot sensor is sensor. Bool sensor B is sensor. So we're going to use another one of these magic little things. So if sensor A XOR sensor B. So it needs to be exclusive. So if it is not exclusive, so if only one or the other is sensor, it's sensor A or sensor B. we're going to do if sensor A. This means that the first sensor is, so trigger object, and then fixture A. And then if, or else if, sensor B, trigger object. Now, technically, because we're using XOR, as long as if it's one or the other, it will be true. If it's neither or both, it will be false. So I'll just leave that. If neither or both our sensors will be false. Ignore my family in the background. I don't know why they're being so loud. 1 second. Apologies. Anyways, where were we? So now we have trigger object. So one thing that I made a change to is that, so the user data of an object equals, so we can cast the user data as an int and we can get the entity number. And so what we want to do here is we're going to just include ECS. And then, so what we can do here is ECS get component trigger entity on trigger. And now our object will trigger the moment that contact is detected between the correct type. So if a player enters the trigger, or if an object enters the trigger, this object will call trigger object. Oh, I almost screwed up. It's supposed to be fixture B. So yeah. And now what we want to do is, so we have this object. We don't actually have access to it anywhere. So what we want to do is go into scene. Wait, not scene.cpp. Scene.h. And then ECS. Typically, we want to go into ECS for all of these kinds of things. So include, or wait, 1 second. Actually, we actually want to put it here, because this is, so what we've created here is a physics listener specific to this area. So now what we're going to do is we are going to move this, and then physics playground listener. So if we go over here, or we go back to physics playground listener, open that up, you notice we never created a physics playground listener constructor. We need to have a constructor, or else things won't work properly. So we just create it, and we need to make sure, remember, because this is inherited, we want to initialize B2 contacts listener, and that's it. That's all. That's all we need. We can add anything we want here later on. Just for now, we don't have to add anything. So now that we've created those, we're already at 20 minutes. We're doing good. We're actually doing really good. We're actually doing very, very, very good. After this, I want to show a trigger, but I will actually show one thing real quick. You will notice that if I remove player from this body right here, if I remove player right here, run the thing. If I run this right now, you gotta wait for it to build, obviously. But once this runs, we will see that did I remove from the Oop. Okay, so the way contact filtering works is this will only contact with player and objects. Object will only contact with environment and player. That makes sense. So why did player just fall through the world? Or why did object just fall through the world, but player didn't? We also want, I never put it in here, but we want objects in here. Just in case for something like that. Run it. Interesting. Is this body even in use? Point is if you do something like this, all I was trying to show is this. If you do something like set that to 0 for the environment, everything falls through. Nothing collides with it. If you set it to just objects, one second. This is all built in, by the way. None of this is like custom. This is built into. All I did was make it so you can pass it. Point is that you can change these and make them contact with different things. I just accidentally deleted some code. Entity. There we go. Done. Okay, this should work. So now if we run this, we've got our regular scene, we've got our listener in here. But you'll notice something peculiar. If we run in here, nothing happens. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our listener. We're gonna set this. And we are going to run again. And you'll notice something interesting. Never gets run. No matter what. And the reason for that is not anything, actually hard. It's this, actually. We have to do this. You have to always remember to do this. mphysicsworld.set contact listener. Oh, and you can set custom contact filters, I should mention. What did we call the variable? Call it listener. Reference to listener. And so now, when we run it, assuming this trigger is only contacting with the right things, Oh yeah, this is a contact listener for everything. I'm dumb. So the sensor will only ever. So you'll notice. Oh, I accidentally changed something. But you'll notice the sensor. Okay, where did we screw up? Oh. The user data wasn't set right. Interesting. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna place a breakpoint. This is some good old-fashioned debugging. We still got time. We got more than enough time. Go in here. Enter it. So this v2 contact listener. Wait, no. We want sensor user data is 0. That's a problem. That's a problem. So what we're gonna start doing is we're gonna do something cool. We're gonna manually write this, because clearly the system in here does not work. I'm gonna delete this. See, we're just gonna delete that, and then. Oh yeah, I should mention where that was. So physicsystem.h, go to update, and then delete the lines that were right here. And it's that simple. You don't even actually have to delete them. They should be fine the way they are, theoretically. I checked these and make sure that they were working, but it's possible that this one just isn't setting properly. Point is what we want is to go into here and add a new int entity. So now we can do mbody dot set user data void pointer entity. And that's it. And that'll manually set. Remember to add int entity. Remember to add int entity. Go back into the H file and add int entity. And now we're going to need to go back to our physics playground because all of these are going to break now. See, now we're going to have to go in here, entity comma. And now when you make a physics body, you just need to remember to put entity first instead. That's it. So now it should be setting them properly, hopefully. And we're just going to open backup listener, go to trigger, set a breakpoint, and let it rebuild. And now this time the user data should be correct. Basically, all that's happening here is the entity number isn't passing correctly. We gotta make sure that it is. Go to sensor, go down all the way to the bottom. No, it doesn't. So that's interesting. So we're gonna, this is gonna fail. Yeah, abort. So I have no idea why it's deleting the sensor data. We're gonna figure that out. Because if I go in here and check out fixture A, fixture B, so the user data is all 0. It's getting reset, but where is it getting reset? Okay, go to physics body. Entity is 3. So if I go to body, down to user data is now 3. So the user data is setting correctly. It's getting reset somewhere though. So if we go into temp phys body, we go to m body, user data, still correct. That is interesting. Oh. Just continue. Oh. That is unimportant. But as of right now, if we go into the contact, go into fixture A, user data is set to 0. Which is interesting. User data is being reset. But why? I will tell you guys the minute value when this gets resolved. But for right now, we're going to be debugging, which that's fun. Yeah, strap in. So here's where we open up Google. We search. Ignore all of those. That's embarrassing. Reset. Box 2D. Yeah, in setting void pointer int user data. This shouldn't have any issues. That is what's weird. Let's go to physics system. Go to update. Check out this every frame. Now if we go in, check out physbod, mbody, user data. It's 2. It's still set. That is interesting. Oh, the sensor might be creating callback box 2D no user data. So it seems that because the user data is still here, if I were to just like stop here and let the program continue, stop it again, user data is still there. It's still working. It's all there. But it would seem that inside the listener, this is a separate thing. So inside the listener, so we get contact. I really don't know why it keeps giving that error. Contact, fixture A, user data 0. What if we do... Ah, that's it. There we go. Sensor dot get body dot get user data. Now if we stop and then run the program again, remove that. See, this is what debugging is useful for. So now we should be getting, now that we've collided with it, and you'll notice that if I roll the ball and fly, it also works when the ball collides with it. See? Now it all works. And there we go. And we still have a few more minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a new trigger. And so what this will do is so So what we should be doing is basically going in and I'm not going to write the new object today. I just realized that. So there is something that needs to be done specifically in order to make this work perfectly. So I was going to use a thing called polymorphism, and you've actually already used polymorphism, and you'll learn about it later on. But the short version of polymorphism is, so you see how here we have a vector of scene pointers. But then when we go into game.cpp, we're actually pushing in first creation, physics playground, animation sprite playground, and they're all working just fine. The reason for that is because they inherit scene, and I can use them like they're regular, like they're just scenes. You can't do that with this. Not currently, at least. And so, yes. But currently what you can do is create triggers that do things like this. And what I'm going to show off to you is just right now, before we start wrapping up the video. This week's video is going to be short, and I hope everyone's like happy with that. So we can easily implement a new version of this. We just need to figure out how to get. So if we get, so the issue is this trigger pointer. We need to get trigger pointer. So you can't pass in a pointer. Maybe yes you can. I'm dumb. Never mind. We're gonna write that real quick. So we're gonna write add class. If this doesn't work, that's okay. Destroy trigger. So if this doesn't work, that's alright. Doesn't need to work perfectly. That is completely okay. So what we're going to have this do is we're going to include trigger, public trigger, and then public and protected. And then what we want to do is go over to trigger.h, copy this void on trigger, create an override for it. Now we don't need to implement anything else. And we can just change it. So what we're going to do is so in this case, triggers will only happen if they have a physics body, so we have to do this thing that I implemented. Physics body bodies to delete dot pushback, and then over here, back in here, we already have get m entity. So dot pushback m entity. And so what this will do is this cleans up the body after everything. This will clean up and delete the body. So we go to physics system and we go all the way down here. Clean up bodies. We'll loop through bodies to delete and delete the physics body and then delete the entity, which is very important. So now we have a destroy trigger. So what we can do here is in physics playground, make it so our trigger uses a trigger pointer instead of an actual trigger. So we can get the component pointer equals new, and then so what we're going to do is a destroy trigger. And you'll notice it doesn't work. The reason for that is you need to, whenever you create a new component, you need to go into ECS. You see how I added trigger here? So we can do hashtag include destroy trigger. And technically we can just remove trigger now. Because destroy trigger already, if we go here, it already includes trigger. Try to keep this as little as possible. Try to keep this with as little items as possible, because that's typically how you want it. You want it to be very legible and very easy to read. So if we go here, this should destroy trigger works now. So now trigger is now equal to a new destroy trigger. So ECS get component trigger pointer equals, or sorry, dot get component entity dot, and then set entity. So now if we go to destroy trigger, where did it go? Destroy trigger. We place a little dude here. Run the thing. This should theoretically work. I've never tested this. This is brand new code. I figured I would show this off because I thought you would find it cool, and I mentioned this in my puzzle that I was going to show you guys, that I gave you examples for last week. That basically, so because we're overloading on trigger, what this will make the playground listener do is it'll call the right version of trigger. Trigger base class undefined. Interesting. It's right here. That's weird. Gonna go over here. Rescan project. Or sorry, not rescan. Is it rescan? But yeah, it says this is an error, but it's not. Which is what's weird. Because, trigger's right here. Destroy trigger includes trigger. Nothing else. Include ECS. Okay, that's another bug. Surprising. So let's try this. Move ECS in here. And then move it into the CPP. And then move ECS, include ECS in this CPP. It could be an include error. I'm thinking it's an include error. Because I've never seen that issue. It's not even recognizing the file. Trigger.h, this isn't an error. So it has to be an include error. Is what I'm assuming. It was probably a circular include, which happens. And creates issues. Let's see. It worked. Now for the moment of truth. Ah, it ran. It ran the right one. Deleted itself. There's no body here. No triggers being run. No nothing. Deleted the body. So what we can also do is if we go into playground, .h, we can do like int wall equals 0. So this wall. And so when we create the wall, which is right here, create the wall. So wall equals entity. And then we can give trigger wall. So now we've stored this wall entity, the number for it, and we can give trigger that wall. So now what this is going to do is this is going to delete the wall, which is really cool. But yes. Now if I roll this ball, just deleted the wall. Don't know what happened there. I believe it might be because, oh. Weird, that should be clearing. Let's check this. So bodies to delete, 1, 6. Bodies to delete, size 0. Oh. That should not be during it. Jeez. That's a big error. Make sure to fix this. Interesting. So for some reason it's adding it back to the list. So I'm gonna... Oh, that trigger's still there. So that trigger's still there. So you see this trigger? Pushback entity. So it's already deleted it. But now, watch, the moment that this body enters it, it's gonna add it to the list again. So what we want to do is go in here and do, so there's an ECS. So what we want to do is ECS. We can't actually get the thing that I want to get. Okay, so this is a thing that I'm going to fix in my off time, and I will post a fix for with the file. It's a super easy fix, so what we just need to check is if this body is already deleted. So destroy trigger, or here's what we can do. Triggered equals true or equals false. And then on trigger, if not triggered, so this wasn't an issue before because we deleted the same body. So you don't want this triggering every frame. You don't want this triggering every single time specifically. You do not want to destroy triggering every time. You can want the trigger, regular trigger here, triggering every time. Heck, you could even make this use a random number and just have it set the transparency randomly every time you enter the trigger. You could even have it change the color of the physics body, like of the physics body drop. But now that issue shouldn't be a thing anymore. So if you go into destroy trigger, add the triggered variable, add an if statement to check if it was triggered, and then set it triggered whenever it's triggered. And that will fix your issue. That will fix any issue. There is something that I need to add to ECS for next week, though. And it will be in the next tutorial. It won't be like taught, but it'll be shown. But yeah, so now this will work. Now the body just went off the edge. I'm going to run into it. Run into it. You'll notice this trigger isn't doing anything anymore. That is if we go here, go back to the game. It is triggering. It's already triggered. So yeah, you can have triggers to destroy specific bodies, triggers to do like anything you want. And that's it. That's all for this week. You can create a bunch of different triggers. And that's just it's really cool. Triggers, I think, are one of my favorite things in game development. So this even works if we change it back, so we can just write new trigger now. And this still works even if we change it back. So this will still work. Beat it. Set the transparency. It still works though. Still does its job. And we can easily destroy trigger. For context, if you ever want to talk about this is called polymorphism. It's an important concept. And you are taught it in object-oriented programming. So all the... Oh, I accidentally typed. Hate it when it does that. Now the wall is gone, and if I press T, the wall is no longer drawing. Because the physics body is gone, there are no errors, blah, blah, blah. That error, by the way, that shows up, that's not an error, that's Visual Studio's being garbage. Visual Studio being garbage. But yeah, that is everything for today. Your task for this week is I would like you to create more triggers. Like, you don't have to create a new trigger type if you don't want to, but you can. That's completely up to you. You can make it so you can make a new trigger type like, change color and have it set the physics body to a random color. Or you can make it, you can set the color to green when you're in it, and then, you could theoretically write that. That's a lot of work. It's up to you. But there are the possibilities are endless. I just want you guys to continue with this and create your puzzles. Continue with your assignment. Make sure you've started it. Please, please, please make sure you've started it. It's very important that you've started it by now. It is due on the 20th, which is 3 school weeks away. So you have 15 school days to finish it. If you include other days, you have 18 days, basically, because it's due the 20th. Yeah, due the 20th. At least that's what it says on Blackboard. That should be the due date. That should be the final due date as far as I'm aware. But yes, it is go nuts, go wild, do whatever you want. I've gotten it up to 54 minutes. That's still under an hour, like I said. But have a great day and enjoy yourselves. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and as much as I did in making it, even though we had a lot of debugging. But yeah, have a great day.